So hi, my name is Gianmarco Miranda Bueno, and thank you so much everyone for being here with us today. I can't wait to share my presentation with you. As Jessica said, if you check in the chat, you'll find a document labeled Downpour Detour Design Brief with a link to a supplementary document where you can find more details about my project. However, the main thing today is a presentation, so I hope you're all ears. So let's get started. I want to open this presentation by telling you a bit about myself. The photo you see in front of you right now is of a man rushing to his home in Havana during the devastating floods brought by Hurricane Irma in 2017. When your street becomes more like a river, you can only begin to imagine the destruction that follows suit. This is my home city. I show this photo because I want to express that I did not stumble upon this project by chance. Every year, millions of people around the world suffer from the effects of natural disasters, and this issue is only becoming more and more common due to climate change. So due to my firsthand experience, I'm determined to combat this issue. And this issue isn't something in a faraway place existing only in the tropics. If you live in New Jersey, you know what it's like too. This is something that materializes in people's lives, from a minor disruption of their daily commute to a complete upheaval of what they know. A resident I spoke to deplored her experience moving to Princeton weeks before Hurricane Irene. Her life was upended and she lost everything, having to live in a hotel for 2 months with 3 kids and a dog. This event became a defining moment to her Princeton experience. It is crucial that we draw attention to this crisis because in the best case scenarios, negative impacts could look like property damage, pollution, but in the worst case scenarios, it's not as pretty, causing home displacement and even death. But what if a storm doesn't have to be catastrophic to human life? This is the future we wish to build with the Downpour Detour project. And so today we'll talk about the changing context surrounding severe storm weather, the problems and insights from mitigation efforts, and a possible approach the Downpour Detour team would like to take moving forward. And so what does the data say about this changing reality that we're facing with severe storm weather? First, we're living in unprecedented times. Mercer County has been experiencing more severe storm weather events in the past decade than it has ever seen before in its history. This is our new normal, and we can no longer ignore the realities of climate change. Secondly, designing infrastructure to mitigate flooding should be a top priority for us. Flooding wouldn't be an issue without human development. Humans have created widespread coverage of impervious surfaces that don't let water filter through the ground. And this makes areas like Princeton a lot more prone to flooding. The map you see right in front of you is of the spread of impervious surfaces in the Princeton area. The upshot of this graph would essentially be that there's not many places for the water to go. And this causes floods that cost millions of dollars all around the US. And in 2020, we saw that the country had an annual loss of $32 billion. And scientists predict that this cost could rise to $41 billion by 2050. And the average home in New Jersey in a flood zone area has an average annual loss of $1,700 compared to the average home having only a loss of $100 from flood damage. And we know that people are affected across the socioeconomic continuum, but natural disasters aren't great equalizers. The map you see in front of you shows the distribution of wealth across our region. And as we all know, Princeton is generally an affluent community, but there are still some levels of inequality within the area, and especially when compared to nearby townships. Differences in wealth mean disproportionate impacts. And those who are at the lower end of the income bracket are most vulnerable. Why? Well, because they're more likely to reside in areas that are more susceptible to storm damage. They are often less prepared for the economic impact that follows a storm, and they usually find it a lot more difficult than their affluent counterparts to relocate. So this is the context, but contextual data is not enough to understand the problem in any meaningful way. As Jessica said, this summer was about talking to folks to fill in the gaps that typical research won't show us. And so here are the insights from my interviews. First, despite the plethora of efforts from our local governments and nonprofits, we still see that these efforts often lag behind community needs. Residents criticize government policies for having loopholes, and they also feel like the government sometimes doesn't do much beyond basic maintenance. On the other hand, local nonprofits also struggle reaching residents, and residents express that they wish these organizations had a greater presence in their community. There also seems to be a lack of agency and urgency. A lack of agency from the over-reliance on top-down mitigation strategies, and a lack of urgency because not everyone is affected by this issue to the same extent. Some people's houses get flooded every year, and some people never have a flood. But it's important to note that what happens off of someone's property ends up affecting them as well. But that doesn't mean there's nothing we can do. Through my research and interviews, I have found that there's a strong sense that community efforts at mobilizing and advocating for their own climate resilience have proven to be effective. Many communities know that climate change is a real issue. We, on our part, just need to make it as easy as possible for them to play a role. So what approach does the Downpour Detour project hope to take? What intervention are we proposing? And so, given that there's a perceived lack of presence from local nonprofits, there's a slow governmental response. When facing these far-reaching negative impacts of these worsening climate trends. But we know that there's strength in community responses. And so there's an opportunity for us to step in and build a community-driven model that integrates existing efforts so that stormwater mitigation is in residents' own hands. This is a model that seeks to close the storm resiliency gap for underserved New Jersey residents. When we say New Jersey, we don't necessarily mean a statewide solution, but one that spans county lines. So you can imagine Princeton and Mercer County and nearby townships that might be in other counties. But before talking about our intervention specifically, let's first take a look at what has been done in the past. We can see that a variety of approaches exist, and they all fall into different categories once you sort them from top down, bottom up, and whether they're focused on broad solutions that would be applied to everyone, and whether they're equity focused. Our past Tiger Challenge cohort has worked on the same issue, and we see this current project as a continuation of that. The last team, they collaborated with Terhune Orchards and the Watershed Institute to create rain garden kits and create educational materials. Rain gardens act as an accessible, aesthetic, and home-level solution to stormwater mitigation that residents can implement in their own home. Another example of a community solution is the Princeton Star Neighborhood Program, with whom we wish to collaborate and potentially work off of. The program designates a certification to residents who complete select actions that support climate resiliency and makes them eligible for grants. And so building off of all these different approaches, the Downpour Detour project envisions a future which residents of Princeton and the surrounding areas have a strong community and feel that their ability to mitigate stormwater is in their power. And where, regardless of socioeconomic status, residents can have the same resilience to these issues. And this is the slide I would like to point out if you want to know more about our solution. And our intervention would build upon existing efforts. We would conduct further research into top-down mitigation strategies to solidify the gaps. We would conduct ongoing research into the experience of underserved members of Princeton and nearby areas. We hope to build a replicable community network model that would be inspired by the Star Neighborhood Program. And within this framework, we would hope to push for the adoption of rain garden kits and always driving for an equitable solution. And you may be asking, Gianmarco, why does this matter? Well, our intervention would fill an unaddressed gap in storm resiliency strategies. We believe that there's a great opportunity to develop a grassroots initiative that promotes equity. The way current strategies are operating, this is often getting overlooked. We would work with a variety of stakeholders from nonprofits to local governments, but most importantly, neighborhood groups and homeowner associations that could advocate on behalf of our most important beneficiaries. And by working with us, there's so much to gain. Many people have been thinking about this issue for a very long time. And the idea is to find ways for them to work together so that everyone's individual efforts are more effective. Our measures for success would include a flourishing community where there's effective communication channels to advocate their needs, where residents feel empowered to take mitigation solutions into their own hands, and creating a network in underserved communities that is as robust as everywhere else. This is a tentative timeline building upon the last cohort's efforts. This summer has been about contextualization, ethnographic research. The fall, we will continue this research to inform our prototyping. And in the spring, hopefully, we will launch our intervention. And so that being said, I would like for you to join us in the Downpour Detour initiative. We hope to fight the realities of climate change from our own backyards and building a world in which resilience for all residents exists, regardless of their socioeconomic status.
Check out the full playlist from this year's 50 Days of Summer or visit kellercenter.princeton.edu/Tiger Challenge to learn more. Subscribe for more videos on entrepreneurship, design and design thinking, societal impact, and innovation coming out of Princeton University.